The purpose of this video is to provide a demonstration for searching 1850 and 1860 slave schedules and the 1850, 1860, and 1870 population census schedules to help identify probable enslavers, view their economic status and occupations, which will hopefully facilitate your research. Once you log on to ancestry.com, you select search here at the top menu, and then census and voter lists. Move over to the narrow by category and select U.S. Federal Census Collection. And I think the best place to start would be with the population census schedules so that you're able to identify or confirm that your research subject was actually listed in the federal census in a given time, or actually in a given location. So we're going to start with the 1850 United States Federal Census. And our first subject is Lawrence Young. And when you enter the names that you're searching, it's a good idea. In fact, I recommend that you select exact and sounds like, similar, and initials in case the given name or first name includes initials. And the same for the surname, exact and sounds like and similar. That way you'll be able to capture results with varied spellings of the names. In the lived in field, I'm going to type in Jefferson County, Kentucky. And search. And here is Lawrence Young in District 1 of Jefferson County. If you have an approximate birth year, you could include that. Let me back up. You can include the birth year and location if you know that, but sometimes putting in too much information might alter the results that you receive. So I'm going to go back to search and view the record for Lawrence Young. So in 1850, he resided in District 1, Jefferson County, Kentucky. He was born about 1794 in Virginia, based on the information provided to the census enumerator. He was a white male. His occupation was farmer. His industry was agriculture. The value of his real estate was $57,000. Now, in 1850, they did not provide a separate value for individuals' personal property. So it's not really known whether some of the value of his personal property was included in the real estate. Here's a listing of the individuals in his household. And this is the digital image. So you can expand the view for easier review. The relationships to the head of household in 1850 were not recorded. This is E.J. Young, a female who is presumably Lawrence's wife. Richard Young here is listed as 46 years of age, but it was my understanding that Richard Young was the son of Lawrence and E.J. So we'll see as we go to the 1860 and 1870 census whether we find a match to his age, or actually a reset to his age. William, Virginia, Benjamin are presumed children of Lawrence and E.J. And Turner Young, it appears, okay, yes, Turner Young is a Black male or African-American male, and it looks as though he's about 23 years of age, and he's a laborer. So because he is listed in 1850 by name, this indicates to us that he was a free person of color. So he was in the household working for the Youngs. Oh, and I see here, Richard Young, the older one, was probably a sibling of Lawrence Young, because further down there's Richard Young Jr., the son of Lawrence. So that clears up that discrepancy that I thought we had with Richard's age. When you're in the census image, it's important to view individuals who are listed on the same page as your subjects. Not only the same page, but a few pages before the subject, just to familiarize yourself with the names of individuals, the surnames of individuals who lived nearby the Youngs, because this information may come in handy when you're trying to correlate all your evidence for your subject. And so I would go at least 2 or 3 pages beyond the specific page where your subject is listed. Again, just so you have an idea of the surnames of the individuals who live nearby in this community. This represents a community. It could be, and the individuals in the community could be extended family, certainly close associations if they've lived in proximity of one another for a while, business associates. So it's good to familiarize yourself with that. There are 2 ways that you can save the image. You can select save and save to your shoebox so that when you come back to ancestry.com and you're on your home page, you can scroll down and open the files that you've saved to your shoebox. So you can do that. What I recommend, if you're going to engage in some analysis of these files, I would recommend that you click here on this tool icon, select the print function, and select also print index and source data. So when you create you're going to print to a PDF file, and when you create that file, you'll also have source information as well. And the source information gives you a summary of the record, and it also gives you the origin of that record and where Ancestry was able to retrieve that record. So you would select continue, and you see here print. My laptop is set up to print to PDF because I do this a lot. So you can select print, and you're going to go to, you'll go to either your documents folder, your download folder, or if you are using a flash drive, you can select the flash drive as well, and save your document to that folder. So I'm just going to save 1850 Lawrence Young census. So I have that. And when I am ready to review the 1850, 1860, and 1870 census records for Lawrence Young and his family, then I'll have those in PDF files, and it may possibly make it easier for my analysis. So that was the 1850 population census. We know that Lawrence Young resided in Jefferson County in 1850. A shortcut to get back to the location where you can select the slave schedule. I'm sorry, I did that too fast. This is a shortcut. Select census and voter lists. 1850s. And you see here we have the 1850 federal census for Lawrence Young. And in the same way that it summarizes the population census, this summarizes the listing of enslaved individuals attributed to Lawrence Young. And you can see here that he, in 1850, it was documented that he enslaved 39 individuals. This is a summary of that list. Enslaved individuals were listed by gender, age, and color, whether they were considered Black or mulatto because of their complexion. There were no given names listed for the enslaved individuals. So that's a pretty long list there. We go into the digital image and we find Lawrence Young. And if you'll look at this page, that's not 39 people. So you know to advance to the next page and you will find the remaining list of individuals. So when you save the PDF files for Lawrence Young's slave schedule in 1850, you'll need to save to both images. This image here, which I think it looks like it's 900, page 912, and this one, or maybe that was 910, not written very clearly. This page here is 909. So you'll want to save both of those to a PDF file. And again, just as with the population census schedule, take a look at the individuals who are listed in proximity to Lawrence Young. You may not find an exact match because some of the individuals who were listed on the population census may not have been enslavers. So to save this to a PDF, click the tool icon again, print, and also print index and source data. And I'm actually going to save this as first page of the slave schedule for Lawrence Young. I will then advance to the second page listing for him. And do the same thing, print to the PDF for that particular image. So this will be the second page. So now in your flash drive or on your hard drive, you have both the 1850 population census and the 1850 slave schedule for Lawrence Young. So we're ready to move on now to 1860. We can use our back arrow to back up to this page, all census and voter lists, and select 1860. And again, we're going to check the population census schedule to ensure that this looks like the same Lawrence Young that we retrieved in 1850. And it does. His age has advanced 10 years. His birth year is still estimated at 1794. Birthplace, Virginia. And the district may have changed. I thought he may have been in District 1 in Jefferson County. His real estate value here has increased from $57,000 to $70,000. And in 1860, they included the value of the personal estate of the individual, and it's $29,000. For those individuals who were enslavers, the personal estate included the value of all of the enslaved individuals who were appraised at a dollar value. And in addition to that, any personal property, any personal holdings that they may have had in terms of equipment, household goods, possibly. So we see that the household is not as large as it was 10 years ago. And we still have Lawrence Young, Eliza J. Now we know the given name of his wife, his presumed wife, Eliza. Richard is 35, so this would have been the Richard Young that we found listed at the end of the 1850 census, and then Benjamin. But listed in the adjacent household is William W. Young, another son, presumed son of Lawrence and Eliza. And he now appears to be married with 3 children. One of his sons is named Lawrence, which is a pretty positive clue that this William Young is related to Lawrence Young, the elder. Again, check the individuals who are listed on the census page, and on pages previous to that. And you can now compare the information that you retrieved in the 1850 census with that of what you're retrieving in the 1860 census to see if their neighbors have changed, if they're still the same, if you still see the same family names listed. And in that case, you can at least draw some conclusions that these people were neighbors and possibly close associates, since they're living in the same area at least for 10 years, as far as we know. You would do the same thing to save this census to a PDF file. Okay, I just wanted to check that. You would select print and also print index and source data and continue on to save this as a PDF file to your flash drive or your hard drive. So we will select the back arrow again, and fortunately this list, it's maybe because I have researched Lawrence Young quite a bit. His 1860 federal slave schedule appears, and we can see that he was documented as enslaving 33 individuals in 1860. And this is the listing. In some cases, it's interesting to pay attention to how the enslaved individuals are listed. In some households, they listed all the males first, or at least the older males first. So from here you can see, well, actually this goes down to 1 year of age. And then they list the female enslaved individuals. And this little 3-month male is listed down here at the bottom. Could be because he's an infant. It's not clear what kind of logic they used. In some cases, in some enslaved households, you can almost see a pattern of possible family listings where you will see a male, an adult female listed, and then younger males and females under them. So there was no standard in terms of the way they were listed. But it's very interesting to pay attention to it, to try to discern how or why they listed the enslaved individuals the way they did. Going to the image, here's Lawrence Young at the top of the page. So he's probably going to have all of his listings, yes, all of his listings here on this one page. So these are all the 33 enslaved individuals. This column here was supposed to list the number of slave houses or dwellings. So in this case, for 33 enslaved individuals, they were living in 5 dwellings or 5 buildings. Now they could have been 5 dormitory style houses as opposed to individual family cabins. It's hard to say. We would have to find some history on the location where Lawrence Young lived in Jefferson County. R. Young, who is probably Lawrence's son, Richard, is listed with 3 enslaved individuals, and then William W. Young is listed with 4 enslaved individuals. And if we advance to the next page, we'll see 3 more individuals listed. And I don't know if you've had a chance to pay attention, but I recognize the surname Harbold from 1850, I believe. So there are some neighbors who, or some individuals who remained neighbors of the Youngs. So in this case, if Lawrence Young was your research subject, you would want to save this page to a PDF file so that you have Lawrence's entire listing. And then also it would include R. Young, Richard Young, and part of William Young. And then you'd want to advance to the next page to ensure that you have the listing for the remaining enslaved individuals that were held by William Young. So you would perform the same steps, also print source data, and continue on to save these files as PDF files. So that's the 1860 and census and slave schedule for Lawrence Young. We'll use the back arrow again. And we end up on this all census and voter lists page. Select 1870s. And this Lawrence Young is a 2-year-old. So that's not the subject that we're looking for. And I don't see, there's a compiled census for 1850. In the case that you don't find your subject listed under the name that you have been retrieving him under in previous listings, you could go here. This little pencil here is designed to edit your search. And I will replace Lawrence with the initial L and see what happens. So here we have L. Young, birth date 1794, birthplace Virginia. So this looks like Lawrence Young. He's still in Jefferson County, Kentucky. And now we see that the name of the area, the district or precinct that he lived in was Springdale. The value of his real estate is $56,000 in 1870. And you can see that the value of his personal estate has decreased significantly, probably mostly due to the fact that in 1865, enslaved individuals were emancipated. So he did not have the value of 30 plus enslaved individuals that could be added to his personal estate value. In 1870, Lawrence is now 76 years of age. He is still enumerated as a farmer. Eliza J. is still living in the household. She is reportedly 67 years old. And notice she was born in Kentucky, which gives us a hint that Lawrence probably met Eliza in Kentucky and they married there versus Virginia. Here is Richard Young, the son, also listed as a farmer with $13,000 value for his real estate. And I'm not sure, I think this says 10,000 or it could say 1,500. Oh, okay, the indexer thought that it was 1,500 in personal estate value. Benjamin, which is another presumed son of Lawrence and Eliza, holds no real estate, but he has a personal property value of $1,000. If we scroll down here, in the next household, there is an African-American man, about 40 years of age. His name is Wesley Watson. His occupation is listed as farmhand. And again, this is 1870. So he and his family were all free people of color. This is his presumed wife, Anna, and their presumed children, Alex, Wesley, Lewis, Horace, and Edward. And living next to Wesley Watson is William W. Young, another son of Lawrence and Eliza. Now, I have researched these individuals, so I know Wesley Watson was formerly enslaved by Lawrence Young. And this tells me that after emancipation, Wesley elected to he's probably living on the property of Lawrence Young in his own dwelling with his family. And he is employed now by Lawrence as a farmhand. And one of the things that makes me believe that is the way the enumerator listed them. They listed Lawrence Young, then Wesley Watson, and William Young, who is probably listed on or living on part of the property. It looks as though the real estate has been divided at least among Richard and William W. Young. They both have $13,000 personal or real estate value. So if we advance this page, let's see what we find. We may find individuals who have in the past been neighbors of the Youngs. There may be some new names and included here, but it's still a good idea to review the first 2 or 3 pages before, and then 2 or 3 pages, at least 2 or 3 pages. In some cases, if we're really searching for some connections, we might review 5 to 10 pages before and after. One thing that this is an example of how we pick up on information. This individual here, who looks like he's listed as 61, his initial is L, his surname is, they have Craores, but I believe that his surname is probably Cravens, and this may be his presumed wife. And if we advance to this next page here, a page beyond Lawrence Young, we find an 18-year-old Anne Cravens. She's also African American, and she's a domestic servant. This is relevant because she's listed in the household of William Young, Anne Cravens is. And I know that historically there were at least four brothers who served in the Kentucky United States colored troops who were enslaved by Lawrence Young, and their surnames were Craven, and the parents were also enslaved by them. So that is the significance of finding Cravens living close to Youngs. And it's this kind of evaluation of records that helps us to correlate our evidence and try to come to some valid conclusions about things. So I just wanted to point that out to you. So that is the Lawrence Young family. And I'd like to show you just one more. So we're going to start again. We'll start fresh here at the census and voter lists. And we're going to be looking for a Miller family. There was one individual who enlisted in the United States colored troops, whose enslaver in 1865, his enslaver was listed as Madison Miller. So I'm going to go to U.S. Federal Census collection again, scroll down to the 1850 Federal Census, and conduct a search for Madison Miller in Jefferson County, Kentucky. Whoops. So we find one Madison Miller who's living in Jefferson County in District 2, and he is only 12 years old. So we're going to check him out just to make sure that he was indexed properly. And it shows that he's in the household with Robert N. Miller. If you noticed on the summary page before this, the indexer had written Robert W. Miller, I believe. We can check that. And then there's Mary Miller, Robert's presumed wife. Robert has a real estate value listing of $70,000 in 1850, and Madison is listed as a 12-year-old. So let's back up here. And this is what I was talking about. They index that N as a W. So this is Robert N. Miller. Since Madison Miller was 12 years old in 1850, I would suggest, before you know, to save this to your shoebox so that you can come back to it once you discern whether Madison Miller and Robert N. Miller are the individuals for whom we're looking. Then you can save it as a PDF. If you want to save it as a PDF now, you could certainly do that and just have that on hand. So you could go through your little tool icon, save it as a PDF, and then move on to check out the slave schedules. But again, since Madison was listed as 12 years of age, he's probably not going to be found in the slave schedule for 1850. So let's try Robert N. Miller. And here is a Robert Miller in District 1, Jefferson County, Kentucky. And he was documented as enslaving 21 individuals. And here's the summary for them. There was one specific individual of interest during this search, and he would have been enslaved by the Miller family. In fact, his military documentation told us that Madison Miller was his enslaver. And as it turns out, the formerly enslaved individual was named Benjamin Hubbard, and he was born about 1833, which would have meant that his estimated age in 1850 would have been about 17 years of age. We have here listed under Robert Miller an enslaved male age 16 and one age 18 and then another age 19. So their estimated ages fall within a 5-year range to match the age that Benjamin Hubbard would have been. So it looks to me that Robert Miller in 1850 was the legal enslaver or the official enslaver of Benjamin Hubbard, who was one of our primary subjects during this search. So I would save this as a PDF file with the source data as well, and Robert Miller's 1850 slave schedule, and probably along with his census schedule will be added to my archives, if you will, of sources. So moving away from Robert Miller in 1850, let's back up here. And select the 1860s. So we have Robert N. Miller listed in here as our search subject. And here he is in the slave schedule. Actually, it looks as though there are two of them. So this Robert Miller does not have a Madison Miller, and I don't think the presumed wife's age matches. This Robert Miller is 2 months old. This Robert Miller does not have a Madison Miller either. So let's go to our pencil and edit this first name to include Madison Miller. So here we find Madison Miller, a relative is listed as R.N. Miller. So that is the reason Robert did not come up with his full given name written. So we could have arrived at that in two ways, either by listing Madison Miller to see if he was still in the household of his father, or by using the initials RN to search for Robert N. Miller. So we find Madison Miller, 22. This matches the age, the 12-year-old age in 1850. He's still living in the household with his father and mother and presumed siblings. R.N. Miller is a farmer. His real estate value has increased to $175,000. His personal estate value is listed as $35,000 in 1860. So this certainly looks like the same family. Robert N. Miller, his son Madison Miller. So I would save that, go through the same routine to save this as a PDF along with the source data page. So we're going to print index and source data, and then continue on to save that as a PDF. So we have found Madison and Robert N. Miller in the federal census, rather. So let's see if we can find them, or at least one of them, listed in the slave schedules. And it doesn't look, let's try the RN initials. Because remember, we have the criteria set for sounds like, similar, and initials. And there is our R.N. Miller listed in the 1860 slave schedules. And surprisingly, he's listed with one female slave aged 50. So that is interesting. There are a lot of notes in here where one person is listed as the enslaver, and then there's a note that says the owner was L. McKinney. Here's owner Robert Miller. So not exactly sure what the circumstances were here, but they have gone into a lot. This could represent cases where the enslavers were hiring out the individuals that they had enslaved. So they were the enslaver's estate was being paid for the labor of enslaved individuals who were being hired out. That's certainly what this looks like to me. Here, this says owner R.N. Miller, and this is the 50-year-old female. So you would have to do a little bit more investigating. Here's owner, a 17-year-old female owner, Robert Miller. So this could go on for pages where Robert has, here's a 55-year-old female, and this owner was not, it was a Miller, but not Robert Miller. So in this case, here's Robert Miller, a 25-year-old male enslaved individual. He would have been a close match to Benjamin Hubbard, who would have been approximately 27 in 1860. So we may have found the possible Benjamin Hubbard here. And again, listed because Louisville was such a large city. There were a lot of enslavers who hired their enslaved people out to other people, sometimes to private households, and in other cases, people who owned businesses who needed labor. So this would have been much cheaper labor probably than hiring free individuals. So that may be the case here. And you would, if you run across this situation, you'll need to certainly review most of these pages in this section to see if you can put together a story regarding Robert Miller and his enslaved individuals. Because with his personal property value, it certainly appears as though he was still the likely enslaver of many individuals. So this is something that we run across, again, especially in larger cities like or larger areas like Jefferson County. I'm trying to go back to the 25-year-old male. I would, if I were engaged in this search, save this as a PDF file as evidence that a Robert Miller was listed as an enslaver of a 25-year-old male in 1860 in Jefferson County, and that 25-year-old male was within an approximate age range to match the formerly enslaved Benjamin Hubbard. So I would go through the same scenario, printing the source data and saving that to a PDF file so that I have that information when I sit down to actually analyze all my findings. So let's go back to, I'm beginning to suspect now that what happened in the case of Madison Miller being documented as Benjamin Hubbard's enslaver was that Madison Miller may have actually, or Benjamin Hubbard may have been in the household of Madison Miller in 1864 or 1865 and was considered his enslaver, but Robert N. Miller may have still been the legal enslaver of Benjamin Hubbard and other enslaved individuals. So we see that Madison Miller in 1870 is still living in the household of Robert N. Miller, his presumed father. And Madison's occupation, like his father's, was listed as farmer. Now, Robert N. Miller's real estate value has increased to $297,000. So he must have been a huge landowner. He may have owned other buildings and establishments to add to that real estate value. You would need to do an in-depth property search for that. And his personal property value has decreased to $5,000 given the emancipation again in 1865. So Madison is still living in his father's household, probably helping him at least in the family farming activity. There are free individuals, free African Americans who appear to be living in the household too. And I would imagine that Robert had a pretty large estate. So there are farm hands, domestic servants. They have different surnames here, excuse me, here in 1870. We would have to do a lot more in-depth research to determine, if we could, whether any of these individuals were formerly enslaved by Robert Miller. In the case of Benjamin Hubbard, that was not possible because he died during his military service. But you see that there are a lot of African American families listed in proximity to Robert N. Miller's home. And depending upon how the breadth of your research, a researcher may want to save the PDFs of several of these census schedules so that you have them on hand to analyze. But I'd certainly save R.N. Miller, showing Madison Miller here. And if you were to investigate further, you may find documentation that will state that Robert N. Miller remained the legal enslaver of Benjamin Hubbard until emancipation, even though Madison Miller was documented as his enslaver on the individual's enlistment papers. So that is a picture of two different families, Lawrence Young and that of Robert N. Miller, both of whom were enslavers in the Jefferson County area. And in the slave schedules for both of them, we were able to match possible age matches to individual African Americans that we knew to be enslaved by these individuals. So hopefully that will give you a good start in how to maneuver through the 1850, 1860 slave schedules and the 1850 and 1860 and 1870 population census schedules to begin to gather information about your subjects to determine whether in fact they were enslavers, what their economic situation was between 1850 and 1880, and what their occupations were. So hopefully this has been helpful. And I will stop sharing my screen now. And if you have questions, please contact Dan Getterman, and he will forward anything on to me that I may be able to answer for you. I thank you for your attention.